Hello, everyone. This is Zaino. I'm President and CEO of MBO Partners, and thank you for joining us today for the ROI in You, how baby boomers can cash in and build new entrepreneurial business careers. I appreciate everybody being with us today, and we will start just about now. With me today, I'm happy to tell you, is Steve King, partner of Emergent Research. And Steve is a very prominent researcher and consultant, and someone that has tremendous amount of experience, that has performed several research studies, and I think you'll find very interesting today the research that we're going to talk about, which will be released in a full report on Monday. And today we're going to give you some insights into that report about the growth of small businesses and the independent workers within the baby boom demographic, which is defined as people born between 1946 and 1964. So first, let me tell you a little bit about MBO Partners. For those of you who don't know who we are, what we do is provide a business platform for people that want to be or are existing as independent consultants. We make it easy for these independent consultants to work with their clients and the clients to work with them, including contract engagement, putting contracts in place, doing the billings, personal managers to give you advice on how to run your consulting business and handle all the bureaucracy and business issues that are required in running your business, a full expense management system, and taxes and benefits and business insurance. I'm not sure what that background noise is, but I think it just went away. Next, let me just make sure that everybody is aware of how the webinar controls work. On your screen, you should see the GoToWebinar panel, and you'll notice that there's a full screen icon to maximize the area so you could get a full experience, so you should click on that. If you want to ask a question, there's a little hand in the round circle that you could click on that and raise your hand, and we could see that, and we'll know that there's a question you want to answer. Everybody is currently muted, so that you are not able to talk live on the webinar. But if you would like to talk live and answer and ask a question or make a comment, you could raise that hand, and we'll open up the mic to you at some time during the presentation. Also, if you don't want to talk on the webinar, you could just enter a chat on the question and answer section in the chat box. So if everybody has a question about that, you could also raise your hand and we'll try to help you out. So let's move on to the program, which, by the way, this is a webinar series, which if you would like to be on our list of learning more about the MBO Partners webinar series. We do these webinars at least on a monthly basis, interesting topics with interesting guest speakers. So all you need to do is send an email to webinar@mbopartners.com. You could also visit our website at mbopartners.com and just make a request for being added to our mailing list. So Steve is with me today, and Steve, please say hello.
Hello, it's good to be here today.
And thanks for being with us, Steve. And we're going to go through a number of topics this morning and reveal new baby boomer data, which Steve will go through. We're also going to talk about why our boom is embracing independent work. And then we're going to talk about the different business options that baby boomers have that are involved in the independent consulting business. So we're going to hand this over to Steve right now, and he's going to share with you for the first time some very important data that is going to be released on Monday regarding this research report.
Thanks, Gene, and thanks again for having me on Radio MBO. This is fun. I want to talk a little bit about the State of Independence Workforce Study. This study we initially started on last summer, looking at both. Our goal was to understand both the size of the people that are working independently, and by that we mean independent consultants and freelancers and contractors and other people with non-traditional work relationships, as well as both the size, and then try to get a good understanding of the attitudes and profile of that group of independent workers to get a better understanding of how they like it, what they're up to, and what they think of being independent. And the study conducted of a couple of surveys. We did 2 national statistically representative surveys of the U.S., one to size the market and one to go deeper about profiling the market. And we also conducted a pretty wide range of interviews with independent workers to also get some qualitative insights and to better understand the data. Interestingly enough, we came up with about 16 million independent workers in the U.S. today. Those are, by our definition, those are people that work at least 15 hours a week on their independent business. We were interested in people that were getting a sizable amount of their income from independent work as opposed to very part-time people. The other interesting piece about it is that about 53% of those were female. And if you've done much work in the small business space, or you'd probably already know that women comprise about 30% of small business owners, businesses with employees. And so one of the more interesting initial insights, and we can talk about it later, is that women are overweighted in terms of their representation in the independent workforce. We also found that there were about 5 million baby boomers that are in the independent workforce. That's slightly higher. That does overweight relative to their population overall and their percentage of the overall workforce. And so baby boomers are obviously an important and large part of the process. When we actually looked at this, we also looked at what the interest level was in baby boomers going forward, as well as others. And we found that about 28 million Americans in total said that they would likely become or may become independent workers over the next couple of years. Of that group, about 8 million said that they were interested in becoming independent by 2013. Of that 8 million, when we actually looked at it, we worked it down to a forecast where we believe about 1.2 million of those folks will join the existing 5 million. So a pretty rapid growth in terms of baby boomers as independent workers. And we'll come back to the reasons behind that in a little bit, and we'll come back to sort of how we see that going forward. But I wanted to first spend some time talking about the existing baby boomers and independence and what they think about it. And as you can see from this chart, they're a highly satisfied group. The way to read this chart is that the boomer part, the blue part, 70% actually report that they're highly satisfied as independent workers. And so one of the most important things to come away with right off the bat is that they are satisfied doing this. Another important point that I didn't put on this chart that I probably should have in retrospect is that the majority of them also chose to be independent workers. And so there's a common theme that kind of goes through with a lot of people, a myth that baby boomer independents are people that have lost their job or couldn't get their job, but about 58% actually state that it was solely their decision, and only 24% told us that job loss had anything to do with their decision to become independent. And so they're choosing independence, they're highly satisfied being independent, and then as you can see again on the chart a little bit to the right, is that they're going to stay that way. Only 8% of boomers are telling us that they plan on returning to traditional employment versus about 20% for all age groups. So the important point here is they chose independence, they like independence, and they're going to stay independent. And if you look under the hood for that, it's pretty straightforward why. Schedule flexibility, work-life balance, work-life flexibility. These are the terms that we consistently hear in our research as one of the key reasons people want to be independent workers. They want to have more control over their lives. And even when you look at some of the other reasons around being my own boss, do what I love. Those again come back to things where I control what I'm doing, I control the kind of work I do, and therefore I'm much more likely to be happy or satisfied in my work. And we also hear things about you're much more able to make impact when you're an independent worker. And again, that part of that is because you're controlling what you're doing. You're working on things that you enjoy. So the reasons for being independent are pretty consistent in this study, pretty consistent within the, interestingly enough, the reasons that other age groups also choose are very similar to this. They're just stronger with baby boomers. And so they're even more interested in flexibility than other age groups. When you look at some of the challenges they face, and one of the interesting things that does come out of this research is that independent workers value their flexibility and love being independent, but they also understand that there are challenges associated with it. Uncertain income, worrying about the next job, unpredictable income streams tend to be the highest things that we hear from consistently the biggest challenges that we hear. But we also hear about lack of job security. Interestingly enough, with the baby boomers, you don't hear about lack of benefits to the degree that you hear about that in other age groups, particularly younger workers, Gen X and Gen Y. We do hear some about benefits, but once people have reached this stage, they either have a spouse that has benefits or some other mechanism for accessing benefits, or they've learned how to get their benefits packaged. So it's not quite as big an issue as the income issues. And we often refer to this whole set as something we call the burden of empowerment, and that is that becoming independent, our independent boomers feel very empowered by that. But at the same time, they have burdens that come with it about running their own lives. And the good news that comes through loudly in this research is that baby boomers in particular feel they have the skills, they have the background, and they have the abilities to be successful as independents and overcome these challenges to have a successful independent career. So when you look at this, both now and going forward, we have a whole series of factors that is driving the shift to independence and driving the kind of growth that we were talking about. The 5 million baby boomers growing in our forecast a little over 20% over the next 2 years, pretty substantial amounts of growth in terms of how quickly it's moving relative to how slowly employment change generally moves. And so I've talked already about work-life flexibility, but again, when you start forecasting this out over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of what's going to happen, this just becomes loud and clear. And as boomers age, they want more flexibility than they did before. And so as this cohort gets older, you talk to a 50-year-old boomer, and they want flexibility, but a 55 or 60-year-old boomer is starting to insist on flexibility. And so as we boomers, and I should point out front, if you couldn't guess from my picture with the gray hair, I am a baby boomer, and I feel it the same way. Every year I'm thinking I want more flexibility than I had last year. That's just the way the world works. The second thing that's a reality for us aging baby boomers is our job options are becoming more limited. Age discrimination is real. There's no question about it, and multiple studies have shown that. Companies are less likely to be interested in hiring us in a traditional employment environment, and of course the Great Recession has taken its toll. So when we look across our job options, for more and more baby boomers, independent work is going to be by far their best choice. They're more likely to get hired on by corporations as an independent worker and as a consultant, where the company does not have to worry about benefits, does not have to worry about a commitment, than they are getting full-time jobs. So what we're going to see, this lack of job options, even as the economy recovers, the shift that's going on to the contingent workforce, to companies hiring more part-timers, more consultants, is going to continue to be in place. And so therefore, boomer job options in terms of traditional jobs are going to continue to be limited, making this more popular. And then as we age into our traditional retirement years, that's when you start to hear about the desire to stay active. Older boomers are telling this. Seniors 65 and above tell us this consistently. I want to stay active. I want to stay engaged. That helps me with my own personal life. I feel better about myself. And as our boomers get a little older, right now our oldest boomers are 65, sort of getting into that sort of traditional retirement age and past that, they're explaining this is a big part of why I want to stay work. I want to stay engaged in the community. So we'll see that continue as the cohort gets older. And it's not finally, but importantly, is our ability to go independent and to start our own business and to start a career as an independent worker. Technology has just made it cheaper and easier than it has been in the past. And so it no longer takes a lot of money to get started. You're leveraging other assets, and we'll come back to that a little bit, that you've developed over the course of your life. And so it's not expensive and it's not risky. We're hearing from a lot of independent workers that the cash component, the investment component, is in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. And one of the reasons is that you already have in your home a lot of the technology you need to go forward in terms of internet access, computers, and so forth. So it's never been cheaper and easier to start an independent business than it is today. And there's a flip side to this, which is companies are now much more comfortable hiring independent workers. And I laugh. I started my independent work over a decade ago, and it just amazed me that I could get hired by major corporations around the world when I was working from my house. But already back a decade ago, the views of independent workers had shifted enough that they knew I could be a professional supplier, even though I didn't have a traditional job, a traditional firm, or even a traditional mailing address. And then finally, of course, I don't want to ignore the financial need. As boomers are reaching retirement age, the recession has taken a toll on us in terms of our financial assets, in terms of the value of our homes. And so we're going to see boomers need to extend their time in the workforce due to financial need. And that's also a reason why we'll see this shift to independence. So a wide range of drivers to the shift. And with that,
so Steve, that's great. Thank you for running through that. I just want to make sure everybody is aware that there is a report that is going to be released on Monday. It's a full report of this research. And I will tell you that this past week, Steve and I have participated in a summit in Washington, D.C., a Boomer Summit, of which there were many government officials, a lot of press. There's a lot of interest around this. And I have a couple of questions for Steve that came up at the conference, and I'm curious to get Steve's reaction to. But the Boomer demographic, has always been people that have wanted to make a change and be aggressive. And I'm curious, Steve, what do you think is the reason why this demographic is more, take charge of themselves, and why do they stick out in a more than an index further than the other age demographics? Is it part of that personality of that generation?
Yeah, it's interesting. Boomers, and it's always, as a researcher, you have advantages when you're talking about your own situation, and you have disadvantages. You're a little biased, but we boomers, from very early on, we're going to change the world, and we're going to change the world to fit our needs, and we're going to change the world to fit what we were looking for out of life. And you go back, whether we're talking about the shifts in the 60s and the social shifts that we've seen throughout our age group, but whatever stage of life we've entered, we've changed things, and we've done things differently than the generations that have come before us, and we've done them much more differently than the generations that have come before us. And so as boomers, as we're entering into our retirement stage, we're doing the same thing. We're saying, what do we want out of it? And what we want out of it is traditionally boomers have been interested, this whole idea of activity, this whole idea of learning, this whole idea about giving back are all things that boomers are very interested in. And independent work and gives us both the ability to give back like that and the ability to stay involved and to stay active, while at the same time giving us the flexibility that we're now looking for. And for a lot of boomers, work has been all-consuming or near all-consuming, and we're ready to try new things. And I think that's a fundamental difference from the generations before us in many ways entering retirement. They were ready to stop, whereas we want to take advantage of that time and do something new. But at the same time, we are interested in continuing work as something new. So when you look at these people, they want to work, but they don't want to go just do exactly what they were doing before. They want to take advantage of their skills to do new things, to approach it differently, to do it in a more flexible manner. So there's a lot of under the hood, a lot of social drivers in the way we are as boomers that's making this happen.
Great. Well, thanks, Steve. And I'm going to move us to the next section of our remarks here on the webinar, which basically to talk about, why now? What's really going on overall in our economy and in our workforce that's causing this surge of independent work. So, Steve mentioned some of this as a result of the research, but I would say primarily the number one issue is the dramatic change in technology has accelerated this trend. Technology, be it mobile, cloud, and social, have allowed people to work remotely, removing the need for geography for people to be working at an office, enables people to collaborate from anywhere, enables people to do work while they're traveling through mobile, and that is obviously one of the major accelerators. The other is, for this generation, they have the ability to leverage a lot of great experience. Most of the people entering the baby boom or in the baby boom, which I think every day there's about, what is it, Steve, 10,000 more every day are
reaching 65.
Reaching 65. So there's and the total is what, about 75 or 80 million?
About 80 million,
yeah,
in total.
So there's a tremendous amount of people that have great experience. They grew up during the the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the height of the technological revolution of the PC, and there's most of our large organizations have built systems during those years. They got a tremendous amount of expertise, tremendous amount of experience with the systems that they've been working with. They have institutional knowledge. They're at a point now where they could start leveraging that and selling that either back to institutions that were using them as employees or other institutions that want to take advantage of that skill set. The third item is the rise of what we call the project economy. And certainly this has also been accelerated through the recent years of economic turmoil with what's known as the Great Recession. And this is a result of organizations, primarily in the private sector, companies, that have had to adapt the way they do business, where they are working much more on a project basis than traditionally they have. And they need to do that because of the rate of change, the competition, the new business models evolving, the fact that we're absolutely in a global economy and competing with organizations all over the world. So companies have realized that in order for them to be agile and basically reinvent themselves on an ongoing basis, the work they do needs to be cut up into smaller pieces, given out into project-based statements of work or areas of expertise, and whether they outsource them to a company or to an individual consultant or expert, that is a very good way for them to get work done quickly, easily, less expensively, but most importantly, giving them the ability to adapt quickly to change. And we call that the project economy, which by itself has created a tremendous amount of opportunity for independent workers regardless of their demographic of age. But certainly for this group of 70 to 80 million people that have a tremendous amount of intellectual capital that could be leveraged upon. So let me talk a little bit more about this project economy and give you some other research that was done by an organization called the Aberdeen Group, which is a corporate research organization, which basically found that project-based work it relies on a diverse group of individuals and service providers. But the interesting statistic here, which is quoted on this slide, is 77% of the companies that were surveyed by the Aberdeen Group report they use independent consultants because they need specialized skill sets for these projects. And this little chart in front of you helps give you a sense as to why companies would use independent consultants. So you start on the left side, on the vertical axis, it goes from anonymous to individual specific. And what that means is, on the bottom is, I just want to get work done, I don't really care who does it. On the top is, I know this particular person and I trust them, I want them to do the work specifically. On the horizontal axis, on the left side, you have tactical work, things that are not very strategic to the company, but things that just need to get done. I need to, have a PowerPoint presentation built, or I need to have a logo done, or I need to have a specific piece of tactical work done. I might go ahead and do that with someone that necessarily could just get the work done without me really knowing who it is. As you move out to the right, the work is more strategic. It's more important to my organization, and therefore the risk is much higher than I need to make sure I trust and know the person. And what this chart does, it shows you that the types of organizations companies would use to provide this type of project work. And there's many of these freelance and marketplace sites that have evolved, and certainly with social networking, there's dozens and probably hundreds of them, where you could go online and say, gee, I want to get this piece of work done, and I'll spend $300 or $400 on it, or $1,000 on it, and that is one area of a tremendous amount of small project work, and a lot of it being done actually offshore. You move up into the top left box, you'll find that those are staff augmentation companies where I need work to be done on site. I just need additional resources. As long as they're qualified resources, I don't need to have some prior experience with them. I could just get them to work. Moving down onto the bottom right, where I have strategic work, I don't really know anyone to do it, but I want to go get a branded large consulting firm. I'm going to go by the brand of that firm because I know they have good reputation. My board of directors is going to be happy that I selected that firm, and therefore I would look for a real organization that their brand is what's important to me, and I know they have good people. And of course that goes the same with a boutique consulting firm, although boutique consulting firms you may choose because you've used them in the past. But up on the top right are the independent consultants. These are those people that have high expertise and high trust with the organizations that want to use them. And those are the people that are handpicked. They're very specific, and that is the opportunity for the boomers that we see and that other organizations are using. And certainly we see this in our own organization at MBO Partners, where about 40% of our associate base and consultant base are in this boomer demographic. So I hope you find that useful. So how do you capture the return on investment in you? And this is a concept that I want to talk about in regard to the change of how the new way people are starting a business. And traditionally, when you start a business, traditionally you think about, well, gee, I have an idea, I need money, and in the past, there was a large need for large sources of capital to start a business. You would need to go buy a storefront, if you're going to open up a coffee shop, or you want to buy a vineyard, or you want to start a company, you have a lot of employees, and you need capital. And obviously everybody knows that when I start a business, I need capital. Well, I'd like everybody to think about capital really comes into three flavors. You have financial capital, which is your funding, right? Your cash. You go to investors, banks, and so forth. You get a revolving line of credit on your home, which nowadays is not very easy to get. But in the past, financial capital was a pretty important requirement to starting a business. You also have an intellectual capital. These are the ideas, your business plans, and the motivation and the guts to go ahead and create that business. Then you also have social capital. Those are the relationships you have, the people that trust you, the community that you're going to sell to, the partnerships you're going to develop. And these three pieces of capital have always been what's needed to start a business, but in this new way of building a business, the dynamics actually change dramatically. And as you can see in this slide, the traditional economy, you have funding-centric businesses where you need a lot of financial capital. There is certainly a level of intellectual capital that's always needed and a level of social capital to market. But this is the old economy. The new economy, in the expert economy, is a very service-centric business. And as Steve pointed out in his research, in order to start a business today, for a service business, you don't need a lot of capital. You don't need a lot of cash. And as you can see in the representation in this diagram, what really matters is your intellectual capital and your social capital. Of course, you always need a financial capital. You need a reserve. You need to have some money to make sure you could carry yourself between projects. You need some cash to make sure you could appropriately market yourself and go to the events and keep your skills sharp. But that's a very small percentage compared to what going into business was many years ago. So this is another change to the way that people need to think about new business models. And I think this report really supports that, and a lot of trends are supporting this new structure of building a business. So let's talk about these new service models and what we could coin as boomer business models. There's really three ways you could think about building a consulting business for yourself. You could be an independent consultant, you could be a broker, or you could be a project team. So let's talk about the independent consultant. This is what you mostly think about. This is you as an individual going out, spending your time, earning a fee for your time, and delivering your expertise to your clients. Pretty traditional, whether you charge an hourly rate, whether you charge a daily rate, whether you charge a percentage or a value-based rate, which we do have other webinars and content on how to actually calculate your bill rates and different ways of doing that, whether it's cost-based or market-based or value-based. But either way, this is a matter of you delivering your services based on your time, and obviously you need your time to earn money doing it this way. Another choice you may have is to leverage some of that social capital you have and that trust you have, where you as a broker, you could become a broker where you have clients that trust you. They understand that you know how to get the work done and you know how to deliver a level of quality, and perhaps you know how you could actually find the people and connect them with the people to get the work done. And you could play a role of helping facilitate people to get the work done and clients who want to get that work done, and match them up, and pretty much have a fee for producing that arrangement where you're not doing the work yourself. And I will tell you that usually it's not one or the other. It's usually a combination. And we have many of our MBO associates that are actually doing some consulting work, but also connecting consultants with projects and clients and leveraging that trust and that social capital that you have and capitalizing on that and getting some return on that. You've got that capability, and it's something else that you could turn into some income for yourself. The other is a project team. A project team is where you can, in addition to doing your own consulting or the brokerage, what we just talked about, you may find bigger projects. And bigger projects require more people than perhaps you either want to spend your time on or more than you could physically do because it's a large project. And here's where you could build a team to go after a particular project with people that you know, people that you trust, working with the clients that know you and trust you, and you could deliver a project that's based on either a fixed rate or a combination of different rates. But here you could go forward and capitalize on the entire team and actually earn a pretty good income by delivering that project. Now, obviously, you have to know what you're doing. You have project risk, where if the project doesn't work well, then you also have the responsibility of paying for all the people that are getting the work done. So if you're good at what you do and you have leveraging that intellectual capital that you have, leveraging that social capital that you have on both the client side and the consultant side, you'd be in a great position to leverage that capital and get a high return on you. So let me conclude our remarks here by giving you some stories. Everybody likes stories and give you real life stories. And actually on our website, you'll find that we have a interesting, fun area of our site, which is Meet the Independents. We have a State of Independence study, which actually Steve and his firm did for us last summer. It's called the Independent Workforce Index, and we're going to keep that index going every year so we could actually measure the trends of how independent workers are doing from a growth perspective, and even from all the subtleties of their motivations that Steve went through. But in addition to that, we're actually interviewing independent workers around the country. And you could go to each of the different states on that site and you could read their stories. But let me talk to you about two stories. So one is Jane Applegate. And Jane was a journalist who spent a lot of time writing and working in a traditional role. And she got to a point in her career where she wanted to do something different. And Jane has a very interesting story. Today she runs a talk show that actually has sponsors such as Microsoft. She has evolved into a very popular expert in small business, and she now lives in Vermont. She has a very nice 400-acre facility. She works from anywhere on her show, and she's built a very comfortable, very prominent, and very lucrative career as in her encore of her career as an independent consultant. Another person you'll read about is Ward Mannering. Ward is also a very interesting individual who spent much of his life serving our government. He was in the federal market, actually worked for the CIA, and as he left in his position at the CIA, he was quickly able to gather a lot of the expertise he learned in human resources and in policy and procedures and all the institutional knowledge he had, and become a consultant for many other firms that do business with the federal government as well as federal agencies themselves. Ward has a really great set of stories if you ever could get to meet him and talk to him, which I had the pleasure of doing this week. He likes to golf. He likes to take Mondays and Fridays off and have an extended vacation, and then he works pretty hard during the week. He stays engaged. He has a great network. He keeps his network fresh, and he's a great success story for an independent consultant. Finally, we want to leave you with a little quiz. If you are either currently a consultant and want to see how good of a consultant you are, or more importantly, you're someone that is deciding whether you can become an independent consultant, or do you have what it takes to be an independent consultant. I will want to say that this is not for everybody, but as Steve said, the baby boomers are a take charge generation, so they are primed for this. We have a little quiz that you could go to our site and also take. In fact, everybody that registered for this webinar, you'll get an email with the copy of these slides, and you'll get a link to this little quiz. You answer these questions, and it'll give you a score as to how ready you are to go solo.
And I just want to add, I took the quiz yesterday, and I was pleased to see that I am ready to go solo, which is good because I've been doing it for 10 years. And so as I was taking the quiz, I was a little nervous. If I didn't pass, I was going to be a little nervous about my future. But it's well worth taking. It's entertaining, but it also sort of gets at the key issues around your personality and your background to help you understand whether or not the solo career will be good for you.
Well, thanks, Steve. So let's see if there are any questions that the audience has. I'm going to take a look here, and I don't see any questions at the moment or any hands raised. So I'm going to wait a minute or two. Steve, do you have any questions about what I talked about?
I was really fascinated by this concept of the shift from financial capital to intellectual and social capital, and what that means. And when you look across sort of your consultants, the independent, your associates, what are the key social and intellectual capital things that they have, and how have they been able to leverage them?
Well, at these points in their career, they tend to have a very rich Rolodex of relationships, whether they've been with usually have been with several companies throughout their career, and they've also are pretty senior level people that take this first step out, and they've already got their LinkedIn profile set up, and they've got a strong network, and they pretty much knew what they were going to do when they were ready to take the leap. So they knew how to leverage their social network for the most part. Some, are at a point where, gee, I guess I need to polish up my LinkedIn. I need to go to some networking events, and they have a little slower start. But certainly the ones that are most successful have worked on that social network prior to their retirement. As far as the intellectual capital, it's all over the map. There's a lot of technology people, there's a lot of management consultants, a lot of project managers, engineers, supply chain specialists, trainers, there's even mentors. So it's pretty much all over, a lot of creative people.
Let me jump in with one more. We're getting some coming in, but with one more, I'd like to know, based on what you've seen, when someone new comes to you and they've just taken the plunge and they're starting, what do you see as their greatest weakness relative to their ability to be successful as an independent?
Well, it's usually they're really good at what they know how to do, and they're experts. They got the experience in their subject matter expertise, and they've got a good network, but they usually are concerned about, well, how do I get started? How do I navigate this, business relationship? What are my responsibilities from taxes? Do I need to incorporate? How do I get my billing? How do I deal with my cash flow? How do I know what to charge? How do all these issues? And obviously that's where MBO comes in, and that's where we really take that role and that anxiety. We really lower the bar to have people jump into their own business. But that is a big point of frustration for a lot of people in terms of, I know I want to do this, but I'm not sure how. And it's pretty hard for a one or two person or small business to try to do business with any large organization. These most large organizations have a pretty high threshold for having someone be a qualified service provider of theirs, and it's very difficult for a new small business to try to qualify as a vendor or supplier directly with any large organization, including the federal government. It could take months.
Oh, we've tried to work with the federal government and gave up.
Yeah. And some organizations are actually worse than the federal government. So, Steve, there's a couple of questions here. Let's see. We've got, where should I look for my first project if I am a boomer trying to cash in? Can we not use the monster.com? Okay. So where can you find your best, your first project? I would say it's probably your former employer or one of your former employers who you can go to, and you should line it up ahead of time before you you go out on your own. Obviously, you got to go out and market yourself, talk to people ahead of time, let them know what you're trying to do. You'll be surprised. There's lots of opportunity. Most of our successful consultants don't have an issue with finding that next project. Sometimes they have an issue of knowing which one to take. Next question is regarding the financial capital you mentioned, that it doesn't take much to start an independent. Have you heard any average dollar estimate needed to start up as an independent? Steve, I think you've got some.
Well, we found that on average to start up as an independent, and these are startup costs. A lot of the people are telling us sort of $5,000 to $10,000, and when we've looked across our survey data, we come into that level of numbers. Then you have the ongoing costs of running your business. You do have issues around taxes and other services that help you do your business, but the startup costs are quite low because to start as an independent, you'll likely work out of your house, you'll likely take advantage of the computer equipment that you already have, the internet access that you already have, and so getting started's gotten pretty easy and pretty inexpensive, and that's a big difference than 15 or 20 years ago. When we first went out, one of the things I had to consider was, should I have an office? Should I go out and buy an expensive set of computer equipment? Did I need a network? All of these things that just aren't needed anymore. So we really have shifted from financial capital to other types of capital as the key driver for independent workers.
Yeah, and there's another comment here that it's not a question, it's a comment, but it's a great comment. That many boomers are getting a pension, and this is extra money and takes a bit of the pressure off, so you could go out and take that risk. And that's a really interesting point, for certainly people coming out of the industries that still have pensions. That's a great way to carry you through this period of startup.
Yeah, I think that's really true. If you're lucky enough as a boomer to have a pension, it still may not be as much as you want, certainly, but it does give you a lot more flexibility. One of the folks that we work with used to be the chief scientist at Procter & Gamble, and he was at P&G for 30 years and was an executive. So his pension, I don't know the specifics, but I'm sure his pension's quite good. But he often comments that it's nice to have the extra money also coming in even at his level of pension. So
sure.
Absolutely, and it does give you a lot more freedom and flexibility. And again, going back to what we hear, freedom and flexibility, the advantages of a pension are enormous in terms of those attributes.
Well, great. Well, listen, Steve, I want to thank you for helping us out today and sharing this great research data and proving that, the baby boom generation continues to break new boundaries and create new opportunities and take charge of themselves and actually create a lot of value. And I think with our current job market and the need for new jobs, this could be a real boom, no pun intended, to our economy. So I want to thank you very much, Steve, for helping us out today, and thank everybody on the call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Closing remarks?
Thank you. Yeah, just that remember, boomers, we've always been doers, and we're going to continue to be doers no matter what our age. And part of doing is being active, pursuing our passions, and staying engaged and working independently fits that doer attitude that we have.
Absolutely. And again, just in summary, if anybody wants to get put onto our mail list and stay in touch with us on these webinars, which are always very interesting, email us or visit our website, follow us on Twitter, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks very much, everyone.